We have to admit something. We've been getting kinda thoughty recently, whether we are explaining the phenomenon of alien abduction, debunking every textbook ever, or doing some third thing. We've been spending a lot of time acting like we have all the answers, and it started to go to our heads. But that all changes now. If Unsolved Mysteries are good enough for Oscar-winning actor Matthew McConaughey, then by golly, they are good enough for us. So in apology of our hubris, please enjoy this cracked classic as well as these similar articles about unsolved mysteries, and also that one article where we solve a bunch of mysteries no one else could because we are so smart, and damn it, we're doing it again. Please forgive us. We need you with us, internet. At risk of sounding dramatic, we don't think we could go on without you. There are unsolved crimes, and then there are kind of creepy where the hell could possibly be going on here. Tapers that keep the cops and anyone who hears them up at night. Here are the real cases that almost fall into X-Files territory. Number 5. The Taman Shot Case. The victim was found at 6:30 a.m. December 1st, 1948 under a street lamp at Somerton Beach in Australia. And with that, we have exhausted everything we know about the man. Stating we don't know what that have been baffling authorities ever since, including the meaning of the apparently uncrackable secret code he left behind. But more on that in a moment. Things first started to lurch towards the creepy when police noticed that all his clothes' identification marks had been removed. They were eventually and painstakingly able to place a jacket to America, which was strange because his dental records and fingerprints didn't match anyone who'd ever lived there or anywhere else in the world. It was like the guy had never existed. So the cops must have been half expected it when the coroner returned with the cause of death, sudden acute onset of damned if I know. The autopsy revealed exceptional health, a half-digested pasty in his stomach, and congestion in his brain and stomach that would have been consistent with poisoning if you know they'd found even a trace of poison anywhere in his body. For good measure, his spleen was 3 times too big. Every breakthrough seemed to increase the mystery. They discovered a brown suitcase that had apparently belonged to the man, but that only revealed more clothes with the tags removed, and the aforementioned jacket. The cops also discovered a secret pocket in the man's pants, which contained a scrap of paper with the words Taman Shot printed on it. The words meaning ended or finished. The text looked like it was a scrap torn from a book, and it turned out it was from a collection of poems called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. And not just any Rubaiyat, but a specific translation, and an extremely rare one of that. This was pointed out after police did an Australia-wide search as if the book was the Ark of the goddamn Covenant, presumably behaving Indiana Jones execute temples and solving ancient Aboriginal riddles. before some dude mentioned he found a copy of that exact book in the back seat of his car around the time and location of death. Sure enough, Taman Shad was missing from the book's pages. Instead of a library card with the dead man's name printed on it, or something even a little helpful, the book contained the clue that would take the mystery from spooky to officially starting to piss us off. In the back of the book, the cops found this code: 5 sets of seemingly random letters, the second of which is crossed out. So what does this code tell us? Nothing. Nothing at all. To this day, it remains unsolved. Was the code the result of a disturbed mind or chronic boredom perhaps? Turns out no. The most recent attempts to solve the case found the letters aren't random, just some mysterious cipher nobody was familiar with. Can you solve it? If so, you're about to be famous considering people have been trying for more than 60 years. Number 4. The BC Feet Mystery. Several feet, usually lodged in shoes, are washing up on beaches in British Columbia. For those of you who aren't familiar, there's a province in Western Canada, north of Washington state. Now all sorts of things wash up on shore, and it's not news that people drown or fall off of fishing boats. But how many severed feet would you have to find before you started to consider it a bit odd? A total of 8 goddamn feet have been found, at least in the last few years, 5 of which have been put on a map for some reason. Strangely, almost all the feet are in running shoes. Also, some creepy bastards stuck an animal paw into a running shoe as a hoax after the story hit headlines. Out of 2 pairs of feet and 6 lone wolves, 1 pair has been identified, the dude's left foot having been found 4 months after the ride. Police mentioned the man was depressed and likely killed himself. Mystery solved? Haha, no. The first 2 feet were found in the same week. They were both right feet and found in different places. Some theorize the feet are from a boating accident or plane crash, but they have been found in different places and carried by different currents. The other theory is the one you probably immediately thought of the moment we pointed out lots of severed feet were washing up on the beach. Some psychotic killer is behind it. If you're wondering why he hacks off the feet and throws them at the beach, the answer is he probably isn't. If there's a body decaying in the water, feet often rot off the relatively weak ankle. Tennis shoes float, so you wind up with free floating feet. As for the other feet belong to, and why they keep showing up on British Columbia beaches in running shoes, well, we probably won't know until we find the rest of the victims. Number 3. The Twin Bee Towels. These are cryptic messages found embedded in asphalt in various cities. The messages are thought to be layers of linoleum and asphalt crack filling compounds, and all towels are found with variations of the same short messages, referring to 2001, A Space Odyssey, and suggesting we resurrect the date on planet Jupiter. Other than that, the only thing setting these abnormally prominent acts of vandalism apart, they've been showing up out of nowhere with no explanation for 30 damn years. You can see the word Tornaby at the top, which is referring to a famous historian, and you've seen 2001, and you know that the planet Jupiter is involved, and that's as much sense we can make of it. Only it can't be just one guy. The towers can be found across dozens of US cities and even South America, unless we have an independently wealthy global-trotting lunatic on our hands. There is a group of people who plant these towers around the Western Hemisphere, like the eco-terrorists in 12 Monkeys. The cops did have a suspect once, one James J. Morastro. However, despite an interest in Thornaby and Kubrick, his widow swore up and down he couldn't possibly be the Tyler, and that he did not have an interest in Jupiter. Oh yes, we said widow. Even if he was Tyler, he died in 2003. The towels had not stopped. Also, dude would have been in his 70s when he laid the towels. There are over 60 in Philadelphia, which seems to be Toynbee Towers hotspot, and the location of four towers together that told a bizarre, rambling story about the mafia. FBI and the Soviets are out to get him, and they probably are out to get you now, buddy, if you started putting those fucking towels on their streets. Number 2. The Glico Morinaga case, aka the monster with 21 faces. In 1980s, Japanese food giant Ezaji Glico has blackmailed by a mysterious group of apparent supervillains calling itself the monster with 21 faces. It started with two armed men who broke into the home of the president of Glico, kidnapping him in front of his family. The men held the executive in the warehouse, calling the company and demanding 100 million yen and 100 kilos of gold bullion. The victim had stayed in the warehouse before he could find out whether or not his company was willing to pay to ransom his ass. None of the bad guys were caught, and that's too bad because the monster wasn't true. A couple of weeks later, several cars in a company parking lot were set on fire. Then the monster began to send letters. In the first letter sent in plastic container along with hydrochloric acid because why the hell not? The monster claimed that they had poisoned Glico's candy, which, which resulted in Glico losing $21 million worth of product that had to be pulled from shelves. The number may be a coincidence, but then again, who knows? The monster taunted the police by detailing in the letters its method of entry, what typewriter it used to write the message, and where it found the container with acid in it. It didn't matter. Cops scoured the country for them and came up empty. Soon enough, just to prove they were toying with everyone, the monster suddenly sent a letter stating its forgiveness of Glico and moved on. The monster then turned into its attention to another food company, Morinida. Another letter was sent similar to Glico one. Only this time investigation turned up a total of 21 packages laced with the highly toxic sodium cyanide. Being the polite kind of shadowy creepy terrorist group, the boxes were helpfully labeled with contains toxin, an example or criminals should follow. The police, getting desperate, they caught a glimpse of the mastermind behind the monster during a money trap. The group had demanded cash from another company. The officer described the criminal mastermind as a man having eyes like those of a fox, which would give him the nickname the Fox Eye Man. The same mysterious man was spotted again later in a car during a sting operation. He escaped, but the cops found the car and radio transceiver that he had been using to listen into the police communication during the sting. So finally, they got a description of one of the bad guys that resulted in nothing. The monster tormented several corporate giants for years, mocking the police, walked the streets as some of the most wanted men in the world, and not a single one of them ever got caught. A police superintendent got so frustrated by being outmaneuvered by the monster that he resigned in disgrace. Oh wait, we misread it. He actually committed suicide by setting himself on fire before disappearing into the night like a goddamn Kaiser sauce. The monster released a letter mocking the dead man and announced it would stop torturing food companies, apparently taking this entire thing as some sort of childish game. The monster's final word to the public: we are bad guys. That means we got more to do than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a Batman's life. Number 1. The Lead Mask Case. In 1966, a Brazilian boy flying a kite happened upon the bodies of two engineers lying next to each other in the grass. There was no sign of how they died before the boy stumbled across them, and he claimed he found them that way. We are sure the cops took a good hard look at him to make sure he wasn't like the murderous magical kid from the Twilight Zone who could kill people with his mind. Anyway, before long the hill was crowded with policemen scratching their heads at an utterly baffling crime scene, if it was a crime at all. The two dead men were dressed for funerals in a fancy suits and impermeable coats. There was an empty water bottle nearby. There were no signs of violence on either of them. Why is it called lead mask case? Well, that's a baffling part. The dead man wore lead masks, a type used to protect against radiation. The police gathered evidence and eventually created reconstruction of the day of their deaths. In it, the men buy their raincoats and go to a bar to buy bottled water. Whatever the reason, one of the men appeared rather nervous, and when they left the bar, they went straight to the hill the boy found them at, then spontaneously dropped dead, case closed. A notebook was found at the scene. The notes inside translate to 16:30 be at the agreed place. 18:30 swallow capsules after effect protect metals. Wait for the mass sign. Well, they swallowed capsules, so obviously that's what killed them, right? The problem is the note seemingly to imply they were waiting for something to happen after the capsules took effect, which means if they were poisoned, the two guys didn't know they were. Also, the man had a coupon to return the water bottle when they finished with whatever they were doing, which also seems to imply that they didn't plan on dying on the hill. Toxicology tests could not be taken due to the victims' organs not being properly preserved. They were apparently left in storage too long, but we like to think the investigators took the idea of hot volleyball and ran with it. So what in the hell convinced them to go out to a hill, strap in radiation protection, and swallow some strange capsules? What effect were they waiting for? What would the mask protecting them from? Was there some third party who convinced them to do all of this, saying the pills would what make them travel back in time or give them superpowers? Was it all part of 60s Brazilian version of punk? So this is the end of the 5 creepiest unsolved crimes nobody can explain. And I hope you have enjoyed today's video, and don't forget to subscribe, like and comment.